So I let go and they found me and they thought I'd be dead, and thankfully I wasn't. Yeah. It's a tandem hang gliding thing. You're attached in the sleeping bag, guy takes off, and then immediately I realised that my sleeping bag's not attached. In my life leading up until that moment, always thought that the more that you hold on to things, the more you bugger it up. You can guide yourself and you go, well, this is where I want to go. And you can't control the way, but you can ride it. I had to let go because I knew that was the only way I was going to live.
For those who don't know, what is Start Beyond, and what does it do, and what's the problem you're solving?
So Start Beyond is virtual immersive learning studios to help people learn in a way where the knowledge that they gain sticks. By replicating virtual environments, everyone learns through experience. My whole philosophy is it's got to have a reason. My background is in storytelling and directing, so I'm coming at it from a storytelling perspective. And then I've got really smart people who are looking at how do you optimize the technology. Creating a culture is more important than building a job. When I was in the ward, there was 3 or 4 other blokes in there, and they were all in their sort of 70s or older. The only thing that they really cared about was family and their close friends. It really hit home to me that in life, the only thing that matters is the people you love.
What were the things that were sticking out to you in those split-second moments? Welcome to Chew the Fat. In this series, I sit down with high-performance guests and we talk about life, business, and what it takes to be at the top. This is part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity by writing a cookbook called Eat with Purpose. But I'm going to need your help. If you can share the content and leave a review, it's going to make a massive impact. And the bigger the audience, the greater the reach, and the sooner we can get to that $1 million goal. Enjoy the episode.
Angus,
Excellent.
today you've requested a chicken burger, and part of the Chew the Fat tradition is I cook a dish to tie it into the Eat with Purpose cookbook that I'm bringing out to raise $1 million for children's cancer.
Okay.
So we have here some nicely peri-peri chicken, a homemade aioli, a little bit of guac, some lightly pickled red onions, and some bacon.
Wow, damn.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Let's get stuck in. I had a thought today, Kai, and I'm going to spitball this and everybody can listen to me have this thought live. Moving forward, I'm going to ask the guests to choose a recipe from the Eat with Purpose cookbook. And then so everybody's picking a new recipe, tie it in. Here we are. Can't have chicken burgers though, but that's okay. All right, perfect. Let's finish up the last couple of bites and we'll get stuck into the interview.
Angus Stevens, co-founder and CEO of Start Beyond. Welcome to Chew the Fat.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Now, I hope that chicken burger is not going to weigh us down, but I want to get kind of deep on today's discussion and start somewhere bold. It's almost 18 years ago. You're hanging in the air. You have the crossbar in your arms. Bring me back to that moment, and how did it shape the person that sits in front of me today?
Oh, righto. Okay, we're getting stuck in straight away. Hey, Frank. All right, jeez. Look, basically, it was a very clear-cut moment in my life, and essentially, so it's a tandem hang gliding thing. It's a sleeping bag. You're attached in the sleeping bag, and the guy takes off, and then immediately I realized that my sleeping bag's not attached, and so instead of me being in parallel with the guy, I'm hanging, and so I'm holding it like that, and it was at Byron Bay, and I just realized that I just had to let go. And it's one of those sort of moments where there's the cliche of your life flashes before your eyes, but it honestly, my mind went into hyperdrive. I could see, everything. And at the same time, I was also in this sort of hyper state of what do I do? And it's odd, but in that, I remembered this guy at uni, and he was really drunk, and he'd fallen 3 stories down. And because he'd been so drunk that when he landed, he didn't tense up, and so he survived because of that. And somewhere in the back of my head, that was in there, and I just thought, I've just got to let go. I've just got to let go of the whole box and dice and just accept that whatever happens, happens. And and so I let go, and they found me on this sort of rocky headland. The ambos came down. They thought I'd be dead, and thankfully I wasn't.
Wow. Okay. Many more questions.
Yeah.
You said you had to let go. Why?
in my life leading up until that moment, I'd always thought that like the more that you hold on to things, then the more you bugger it up. I don't feel like in life you can control things. You can guide yourself and you go, well, this is where I want to go. And I don't know, like with the beautiful view out here and you know, it's kind of like surfing in a sense of like, you know, you can't control the wave, but you can ride it. And so I think that whole attitude to life, which had started, you know, as a teenager, played out. And so we're talking 20 years ago. So I was like, I just turned 32. And I had to let go because I knew that was the only way I was going to live. And if I didn't let go and if I didn't try to just accept, then my body would be tense and I would have died. So I kind of I consciously made myself go unconscious, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I know at that time your daughter was cooking in the oven. Was she?
Yeah. So my wife Sammy, she was pregnant with our little baby girl, Idmo. So Edie hadn't been born yet. Sachin was 18 months old. So she was faced with the prospect of not having me around or having me as a quadriplegic, or they really didn't know. Because for a long time after the impact, like my whole back was so swollen I couldn't feel my legs and I couldn't feel my toes. And also I was so severely concussed that I was just in this loop of just saying I can't feel my feet. And so for about 8 hours, they really didn't know how bad it was, and they thought I might be severely brain damaged, a quadriplegic. They just didn't know. And Sammy had to ride that out. Yeah, which is pretty intense. Yeah.
And so something that's sticking out to me and a question I have to ask is, you know, the idea around everything was, you know, flashing before your eyes, that cliche, but you know, a reality. What were the things that were sticking out to you in those split-second moments? Like what truly mattered?
Look, I mean, it's hard to express that moment very succinctly. Like I can't. It's not something that you can. I don't know. I think the way to sort of respond to that would be to say that following it, when I was in the ward and there was like 3 or 4 other blokes in there and they were all in their sort of 70s or older, and they, if they were leaving the hospital, they'd be coming back sometime soon. Like, you know, they were at the end of their lives. And the thing that I really sort of learnt from that was that none of those blokes talked about work or the only thing that they really cared about was family and their close friends. And there was 4 guys there, and I was kind of like the novelty act because I was 32 and I was still beginning my life. And these are guys who are really lonely and in this dark place, coming to terms with what their life was. And there was a lot of regret in some of those blokes about what they'd done. And you know, it's 2 a.m. and they'll just be having a heart to heart, and there you are, and you can overhear this thing, and you're just like, Jesus. And yeah, it really hit home to me that in life, the only thing that matters is the people you love. So that really has shaped me more than anything else, I think, in the whole hang gliding piece. And it was a great privilege to be in that room with those guys because it gave me a different relationship to life. One, I'd almost died, so it's like, okay, what the hell am I here for? And then secondly, a roadmap of seeing both regret and also a roadmap of seeing what is valuable.
And your wife saw through that entire period of time. What was the impact that you think that had on her?
I mean, Sammy's an amazing person, and I cannot imagine. She's incredibly strong and she's incredibly smart and she's resolute, and she, I mean, you'd have to ask her.
We'll get Sammy on Chew the Fat. Now, I have a last question for you, and this in relation to this. Don't worry, we've still got many more questions. Going through something like this and having that moment, and I can't say I've had something where you are staring death in the eyeballs. I imagine you've thought about post that death more than the average person potentially. And so my question I have for you is, what would you want it to say on your tombstone as a life that you've lived?
Well, geez, I mean, the tombstone's not going to have enough space, is it? I mean, like, come on. Like, unless I've got a bloody, museum.
Hey, business has gone well. You've got a big tombstone. Don't worry.
No, I mean, I think that, like, that ultimately, if the impact you have on the world to be a positive one. So to leave it in a better place, or at least that which you can influence to make it better than it was prior to you turning up. So I don't know. There'd be a pithy way of saying that, but essentially, I don't know that to have a positive influence. Like I'm very lucky to be alive, so I've got to make sure I do something with that. And so yeah, I feel very motivated to not waste my time, and I find myself constantly evaluating what I'm doing and going, is this the best use of my time? Like it is so finite. So am I? I scrutinize myself about that a lot, like, that balance of work and wanting to do good work and then wanting to nurture relationships and care for the people I love, and that constant juggle. Yeah.
And it's interesting when I think about something like this, and, again, I haven't had that degree in my life, but the reality of being a human is we're driven by different, chemicals, neurochemicals, things in our brain, and something like dopamine where, it comes back to baseline. And I imagine, some days, you completely forget about that moment and you're kind of back to the baseline, you go into the grind. Do you find you have to kind of bring yourself back or perspective, or is it truly there in your mind frequently?
I think it's more, it's just in, I haven't spoken about what happened with the hang glider until this year, really, at all. And I think that there's a bunch of different reasons why I decided this year to start to talk about it. But fundamentally, I think it's just, it is such a visceral part. Like it's in your soul, it's in your gut. So, the same way that you know how to do a forehand or something like that, you've got that muscle memory. Well, just imagine muscle memory that's on a sort of metaphysical level, and that's kind of where it's playing. So, you'll always know how to play a forehand, and yeah, you'll do it when you're playing tennis, but it's there anyway, kind of thing. Got it. If that makes sense, I don't know.
It does make sense. It's intriguing. It's one of the questions I actually have is like, why this year? Like, why did you decide it's now is the time to start talking about it?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, so I turned 50. Like Jesus. So, and I think that it's one of those things where it's like, all right, well, look, fuck it. Basically, I feel like this is something whereby it had a big impact on my life, and if people are interested, and if it's of value to others to get a slightly different lens on how they're looking at the world, then great. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I'm not trying to preach anything, but it's just more like, okay, and it takes me out of my comfort zone. It's a very private thing, and I don't want to just be comfortable in my comfort zone. So I find this kind of intriguing, and I think it's good to do.
Because I can see it there, and I'm just going to talk from the heart. I could see as I asked that question, I could see you going into that uncomfortable place, and I can see you get, I can clearly tell you're getting reminded of being in that moment, the way in which your eyes are looking around, the stops and the pause. So I can see it is challenging. Is your hope for it to create that positive impact? Like, what is it that you want that story to be able to do in the people's hearts or ears as they listen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just think that it's a privilege to have been able to get a perspective on life that not everyone gets. And so if in being able to offer that there's some value, then great. But also it's not like, like people beating the drummer like blah, blah, blah. Like I'm not interested in that. It's just more like, okay, well, like life's hard and everyone is always making choices every day about what's important. And, increasingly, well, I don't know if it's increasingly, but people are continually having to challenge themselves about like, what is purposeful? What do I care about? What's important to me? And there's so many messages that you get continually about things that are apparently supposed to be important. So then how do you, cut through that to work out, all right, well, within all, like even just in the self-help world, there's like a zillion different ways of how you're supposed to help yourself, versus all the products that you can buy on a physical self-help or, so there's so much guff out there. So I just kind of feel like if I can just like say, oh, look, this stuff happened to me. This is how I felt. This is how I kind of play now with the benefit of that. And someone goes, oh yeah, okay, then great. And if they don't, fine.
I think perspective is a powerful thing. I've been wrestling in my mind as you were sharing that, because it's often what happens is we get trapped in a little bubble, we do our day-to-day things, and then the most minutiae, the smallest detail can send people on a tiz. And for me, my example is this weekend, one of my neighbours had a car slightly blocking their driveway. Apologies, neighbour, if you're listening to this. And I'm watching on the group WhatsApp, it blowing up, and someone is freaking out. They're like, hoping someone can think more about this person. And I'm like, man, there's people out there who can't eat, and the car is slightly parked in front of your driveway. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important message to share. But let's move forward and bring me to. Is there anything else in your childhood that we need to know the context that kind of helps create the person you are?
Well, I mean, I had a happy middle class privileged childhood. So I think, and I think what comes with that is there's kind of two ways folks go. They either go, all right, well, I want to block this out from anyone else having it. Or they go, oh, I want to, look at a way of being able to use the good fortune that I had to be able to, do something that's useful for people other than just my immediate group. I kind of obviously lean into the latter.
I was hoping that was the direction we were going to take. And for those who don't know, like, what is Start Beyond, and what does it do, and what's the problem you're solving?
Yeah, okay. So Start Beyond it's a virtual immersive learning studio. So basically, we build out VR and AR content, and that can work in the training space and. It can work in enterprise like B2B, content marketing, that kind of stuff. But then we build it in such a way that you can then also, if you don't have a VR headset, you can still do it on mobile and desktop. So the purpose of it really is to help people learn in a way where the knowledge that they gain sticks. And by replicating virtual environments, everyone learns through experience. It's the only way to really learn. So if you can get, the closest you can get to learning is by being able to virtually simulate it. So in VR, you're able to do that. And that's the beauty of it. And people learn faster and they retain that knowledge. So that's the point. I think that e-learning and traditional 2D media has a purpose, but this is a way of being able to supercharge that learning curve through experience without the physical or emotional risk.
And so just for the punters out there who may not know, what is AR?
Okay, yeah, beautiful. So if you think of virtual reality, VR is basically you chuck on the goggles and you got the headset on and then you're totally locked away. So you can't see anything else except what's in the headset, which in this world with all the multiple screens sort of thing is kind of amazing. And it means that it can totally transport you into a totally different environment. And with that, 3 minutes in VR will feel like 10. So you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. So if you think VR, chuck on the headset, it's totally transported. AR, augmented reality, is where you're layering additional information over what you can already see. And so the way that works is your mobile phone, you scan something and then you could have a 3D object sitting on the table here that through your phone, you and I can both look at and then engage with. And so the beauty of AR is that it allows you to visualize concepts. You create a 3D shape of something and then you can then visualize the ideas behind the equipment or, there's a whole raft of different ways that you can use it, but that's where it comes into play.
Awesome. And for anybody out there who's like, I don't know what AR is, but I love Pokemon Go, bingo.
Yeah, that's one way, yeah.
So, okay, so now, and give me the context of like, so the problem is that e-learning space in terms of, hey, this can step up. Give me the context of like, one or two examples of the AR and VR in terms of this learning piece, just so people can really like sink it home, and then we'll kind of talk about like, you know, the business stuff.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like a good example, we've built out for Woolies managing aggressive customers. And so there's, you know, similar to the point you were making about the WhatsApp and people losing their minds over a parked car. So that is like a societal thing that's going on right now. And so what we're finding is that like more and more workforces are faced with their customer-facing staff having aggressive, poor behaviour from the customer inflicted on them. And so Woolworths we've built out a whole suite of different VR learning modules for Woolies, but the managing aggressive customers, what it's meant is that in 3 months they were able to get 60,000 people through the VR program, so that then over the Christmas rush, when everyone's tense and being crappy, then their frontline workers had the skills to be able to know what to do to either de-escalate the situation or to get into a safe space. And so it's been a really powerful learning tool for those guys. So they've been able to understand what to do to stay safe. And then also Woolies has learned exactly where the stores are, where there's greater conflict, there's more reporting happening now, and there's a better level of customer service as they're able to work out what they need to do to be able to support their workforce, but also mitigate, you know, tension points that might arise from a customer's perspective.
Interesting. And you know, the first thing I thought about when you said Woolies, right, is so whenever I have these conversations, I'm always thinking about the audience. It's like, okay, how do we benefit the audience? Because someone's like, well, he's done the VR and AR, so I can't do that. But the first thing I thought about is Woolies. Like here in Australia, as a big customer, how did you go about getting a customer of that magnitude? Like what were the first steps bringing you to that moment? So
Start Beyond, like there's a whole bunch of different tech companies out there and everyone can do tech, you know. But the thing is, my whole philosophy is it's got to have a reason. And so my background is in storytelling and directing. So I directed TV and film and then headed up the entertainment arms of Oz Stereo and then at Nova. So I'm coming at it from a storytelling perspective. And then I've got really smart people who are looking at how do you optimize the technology. And so if like anyone can stick a 360 camera on the top of a mountain, but no one wants to bother looking at it because it's boring. So it's about taking that technology and then adding classical storytelling techniques to it to then make it be meaningful. And it's a long way around to get to the point, which was that Woolies wanted to play in this space. There was a partnership that they have with Walmart. Walmart's been doing it. It's gone very well. The American company that had built it out for Walmart is going, well, who are we going to use in Australia? We'd built out a whole bunch of really compelling entertainment pieces in VR that was all storytelling. And they saw our ability to produce that and went, all right, well, these guys know what they're doing. And so from that partnership, we were able to then build out the whole piece with Woolies. So almost... it's almost like referral based. You it was absolutely. Well, it wasn't almost. It totally was. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, like Striver, the Americans, they have this amazing platform, but they needed people who could make that platform work. So having that technology is great, but if you can't show off the value of it, then it's meaningless. They saw the value in us being able to do that, and then we built it out from there.
Awesome. Perfect. And so do you think, like what got you into this problem to solve? You know, so I understand that kind of creative background. You know, a lot of people are in those moments where they're trying to take the jump, you know, the leap to start a business, or they're like, what is the business I want to solve? Like, what was your process to figure out that, hey, this is an area I want to play in?
Well, we knew... so we had this beautiful entertainment thing and it's amazing, but it wasn't making a buck. And so we're making this award-winning stuff. We're up against the latest Star Wars of the time back in 2017, 2018. So we're doing all this stuff and it's killing it from a creative level, but it's not from a commercial level. And so then you have to make the choice of going, well, what are we doing this for?
That's actually really interesting. Do you know what else is interesting? The Eat with Purpose cookbook. It's part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity. This podcast is a part of that goal. And what you can do is like, comment, share, and leave us a review. Let's get back to the guest.
And from a business perspective, we were making money building out premium content that was playing in that B2B content marketing space, that was educating people around products and it was educating people around like specific learning courses. So it's kind of like, well, fish where the fish are. This is where the market is. So we changed and just fully committed. And one of the things that I think, the biggest thing that I learned within my years working at Start Beyond has been, if you're not totally aligned, then you're just dragging. It's like an anchor on the ground. And so once the business made that call to go, we're just doing this, and you know, originally there was like 4 co-founders. So you go through a lot of learning in that. And when we realized that we weren't all aligned, then people made choices that were ones where they're like, well, I don't want to, this isn't the business that I wanted to do. And they left, and that was all very amicable and it was all fine. But it then meant the minute that played, then that clarity of vision of what we wanted to do just took off. And we haven't looked back ever since. It's been really, really strong. So learning that you've got to be totally aligned is critical.
And when you say totally aligned, are you specifically referring to other co-founders? Like, what are we aligned to in this particular scenario?
Yeah. So in that, so basically, we had a desire. We had two parts. We had a desire to create entertainment content, and then we had a desire to have a business that was really successful. Those two things didn't marry up. You could make entertainment, but you couldn't make a buck. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know? And the reality is, well, I wanted to have a business that was doing good work and that I could rely on and build out and have, you know, a fulfilling professional life. And that meant going this way.
Awesome. And one of the things that stood out, as you said, one of the learning lessons. I think what's really important, again, from that context, from like a macro level for the audience is like from where you started to where you are today, like what would you say the 3 biggest things you've learned about business? Because this is ultimately, you know, were you doing business before, or you were more in roles employed?
Yeah, great question. Okay. So I'd started my career working in an independent agency, building out, like, you know, coming from that corporate, coming from that content creation side of things, where as a director and producer and freelancing and building stuff. So then this independent agency takes me on. They wanted me to become a partner there. And I was like, well, I need to understand corporate world before I run my own company, because I need to understand how that big play is before I go out. So I then went to Austereo and played there and understood how that big company play was. And Austereo became Southern Cross Austereo. So then another company comes in, and then you see the navigation of all that corporate piece. And then from that, I went to Nova, whereby it was basically a competitive play. It's like, all right, well, now I'm going to work for the opposition, understand how they play. And when I was there, the idea was we'd always been number 1 at Austereo. So then Nova took me on, we want to be number 1. So I worked really hard to get to number 1, and then I did it. And then I was just like, oh my God, so to make Lachlan Murdoch owns Nova outright. So all I was doing was making him more money. And at that point I was like, okay, well, hang on. Like he doesn't need me busting a gut. Like, and I, at that point, that's when it was like, all right, I'm going to start up my own company, and jump ship. And then the things that I've learned having run my own company would be being aligned, like knowing actually that the people who are the vision of what you want to do, like, has to be aligned both on a commercial level, but also on a personal level. Like you've got to trust and respect each other and know that the other person wants to do the same stuff you do, but also how they want to do it is the same way you want to do it, you know, that integrity play. So that was number 1. I think the second thing is making sure that if something doesn't feel right, don't wait. Trust your instincts. And so knowing that the market was going here, you just got to back yourself and go, rather than like dither around and watch it play out for someone else. So you come in with informed knowledge, you come in with experience, but you also come in with instinct, and you got to back your instincts. That way, because benefit of hindsight, everything could have been better or worse. Do you know what I mean? But at least if you're playing what you know in front of you, and you're doing it and you're being authentic to yourself, then you've got a better bet of getting it right, and you're not going to wallow in regret because you didn't do what you believed in. And then I think the third piece is creating a culture is more important than building a job. I think by having the culture right, then the business is right. But if you just focus on get this project done at all costs and you don't look after your culture, you might get that one job done, but you've actually buggered up the whole business. So you've got to have the culture right, because then if you've got people invested and they care about what you're doing and what they are doing and they feel empowered, then overall the business does so much better. So, and there were some times where I think that we weren't we knew that things were a little bit not right, but we didn't just make the call and change it. And so then you drift a bit and then you look back going, oh my God, like we should have just made the call straight away.
Yeah.
Like we just wasted a chunk of time. And then the minute you do make that call, you're off. Yeah. And it's like, damn, that's awesome.
And so share with me the culture piece there. So obviously a very interesting insight. We've heard it many times, but I'd love to know, what does that look like in your world? Like, what have you done? What would those key items be that you have done that's had that impact of culture?
I think it's absolutely critical that you have people feel empowered within their role.
Empowered.
Let's
break that down. Give me.
So if this is your square foot, you've got to do this to the best of your ability, and I'm going to leave you to that, and then I want you to report back and show me how good that square foot looks, and understand how that square foot connects with everyone else, so that you understand your value as an individual to do good work, but also you understand your value within the broader vision of your team, and then the broader vision of the company.
Awesome. So, and let me also help add a layer to that for the audience, right? It's you're essentially saying, here's the outcome. The outcome is we need to do X, and how you get to there, that's on you. And you ultimately gives that person, to use your word, that empowerment to know what success looks like, but how they get there, they get to create it. And at the end of that, ultimately, then they feel more responsible for the success. And I think that's the really critical piece is for people to understand in business is when you allow people to figure it out on themselves, when there's a win, they feel the win.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's depending on where that person is in their career, the level of freedom that they have.
Of course.
But within that, absolutely. So case in point, we're going to build out now a product which is a bespoke piece that we're building out to take to the market. And it's going to be based on the success of the Woolworths job, managing aggressive customers as a plug-and-play solution that retailers, aged care, hospitality, a whole bunch of different industries will be able to use to help their workforce. So within that, we sit down and the whole team, it's like, here's the vision of the business. This is what we're going to do. This is where it fits into our 5-year plan. And this is the steps we're going to do. Now, each person within that then knows what their part will be in this long-term play. And then they can take ownership of that so that then when we smash it out of the park and it's awesome, they know that they were part of that and they felt empowered every step of the way. And as a group, everyone's like, yeah, we're on board. Like we understand the big picture vision and we understand the day-to-day purpose.
Perfect. What else? What else in that culture piece? I think that's absolute gold. What else has been there that's been fundamental to bring that culture home for you?
Yeah, I think if you feel like your team is only as good as your weakest player. So often I think one of the things that I learned was when I wasn't CEO and I didn't have the ability to shape the team the way I wanted to shape it, I felt like there was people who weren't motivated, who were pulling down the people who were, and it was really insidious. And I think that one of the big things that I've learned is that just have highly motivated individuals and recognize that what will happen is that the person who's your weakest link is the one that you're going to put the most energy into, trying to raise them. And then what happens is the really talented people aren't flourishing because you're not nurturing them. So you've actually got to find that weak link and go, all right, are you going to be able to change? How committed are you? And if they're not, then you just move them on and you focus on the talent because otherwise everything gets pulled down.
And what kind of systems? So it's so critical what you're saying there. It's really important. And I think realizing that is probably easily the hardest part of a job is running a business. We had a team of 400. It didn't matter a year 12, I still hated firing. It was the single worst part of the job because you want people to succeed. You don't want them not to. So kind of drilling into that, how do you define this is or isn't working? Is there ways in which you're doing it, or is it based again on that gut and that instincts feel? What does that look like?
I think you have, I don't know, everyone's different. So, and everyone operates differently. So I don't think this is a blanket solution for everyone, but I'm quite, I think possibly because of my background, writing and directing and that sort of stuff. So I spend a lot of time looking at people and what makes them tick. And I am often in market selling. So I'll go into a room and I'll very quickly work out who's in charge? Like, what is the power dynamics? And within my role, it's kind of like a little ship that sails into this port, and then you get to meet the whole enterprise. And so when you're in the boardroom, you very quickly work out who's who in the zoo and where does the real power lie. So having that ability and having learnt that over, the course of my career then means that when I'm in an employee sort of situation, I can tell the people who are like invested and the ones who aren't. And then the ones who aren't, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to give you every opportunity to succeed. And then I'm going to see through your actions whether you're genuine about this or not. And also you empower your management team so that they know exactly. And they then, you pick the people who have good instincts around that stuff as well. And you want everyone to be at that level. And so they set the benchmark. And then if the people they hire aren't setting that benchmark with them, they're going to get frustrated with that person. They're going to say, well, no, it's not playing out the way I thought it would. We've got to find someone better.
Love that. And for all the punters out there who are thinking, when you walked into the room, who's holding the pants? Who is the one dominating? It's definitely Kai. Kai sitting to my left of me. He controls this room. So that's good to know, everybody. One of the things that as we're talking and I kind of bring back to that near-death experience around the very powerful word, which was regret. And it, when you said that, I was like, oh, because I'm imagining, in that room, having those regrets, being that age and just going, I can't change it. How's the regret piece shaped your business decision making?
Yeah, I think working at companies whereby you're an employee has with it a freedom, because you don't have to worry about making sure there's enough money to pay for all the people who you've hired. But you're also disempowered with that freedom because you can't make choices around the work that you have to do or the clients that you choose. So your personal purpose and the company's purpose in a good organization are closely aligned. But it's a privileged position to be in, to have that. And so I think people feel regret when they're like, well, my personal thing and my professional thing weren't aligned but I spent my whole life dealing with that in whatever version. If you have the good fortune to be able to run your own company, then you want to make sure that company and your personal are aligned. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing it for? Like, dude, seriously, So it's really important, I think, that like there's organizations that are aligned with the values that I have and that the business has, and I want to work with those companies and work out a way of being able to make a buck that is purposeful rather than just making a buck for the sake of it. So, which isn't an easy path, but it does mean that you feel more motivated in the work you're doing because you're doing it because there's purpose to the work rather than it just being, well, I need a paycheck.
And it's an interesting piece as you share that, right? Because the purpose is often what's going to, through a long-term lens, a macro lens, is keep you in the game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so like it was only recently, it was last week, I was speaking to a founder of a business. This thing is, it's got a team of, I think it's 6. The business is spitting out roughly $4 million EBITDA. He's living in a part of Australia that's pretty chill. And he goes, I think I'm done. And I think it's because he lacked that purpose. And like that is a lot. He's a founder of one, 4 mil in the bank, pre-tax. It's amazing. But it's because that purpose piece isn't kind of keeping you in the game. So I think it's really important is whatever it is, like creating that purpose. What's the meaningful purpose for Start Beyond?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to create learning experiences that allow people to do their jobs better in a way that actually helps them as well. So, like we're doing stuff in the aged care industry. We're doing stuff with frontline retail. We're doing stuff teaching. So these roles, like the beauty of VR is that it transports you into this other world. So if English isn't your first language and you're having to learn stuff and you don't know how because English isn't your first language, but all the knowledge that you're getting is text-based and it's not working, then there's no value to that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we can build a VR experience whereby the learnings are something that people can get and understand and then put into practice and it makes their daily life better, then great. And that's really, very much where we want to play and that's where we go.
Awesome. And last couple of questions for you. So extrapolating out, let's pretend you're 80 years old. You're sitting on your couch, you're having that cup of tea, and you're thinking back to a life that's been meaningful. What are you most proud of?
Well, the thing I'm most proud of is my kids, without a doubt. I mean, they're awesome. Yeah.
I love that. And what is it that you want to impart on them? Like, what's your focus on raising your kids?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same deal that I think everyone has of like trying to work out what the point is. So to be able to be authentic to themselves, to give a shit about the world and their place in it and the value that they can bring to it, and to love the people they love. And yeah.
Angus, thank you very much for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Frank. It's been fun. I appreciate it.